bring you One Day at Teton Marsh.
It was a day in late autumn, the season when change is in the offing and winter not far away. Yet the sun that morning rose with deceptive calm and serenity. In the half-light of early morning, the ponds and lakes were mirror smooth. The towering peaks of the Grand Teton Range were gradually revealed in all their grandeur. Down below, the valley known as Jackson Hole was peaceful, and the marsh around the beaver pond was serene. It was a bracing morning with a touch of chill in it, a good day to be alive. One of the first to stir was the osprey, whose perch in the topmost branches of the old cottonwood now caught the early light. The bird blinked in the morning's brightness and took a moment to come fully awake. But once alert, it surveyed its surroundings with a sharp and searching attention. The osprey counted himself sole possessor of the waters of this valley, all the creeks and lakes and rivers, for these were his fishing ground. Each morning, regular as the sun itself, it was his habit to patrol his domain, seeking his breakfast. Seldom did the osprey miss a catch like this. Generally, his talons found their mark unerringly, and that was what made the incident unusual. But this, it so happened, was only the first of a series of uncommon events that would make this a day to remember. All the bird's anger and chagrin, it seemed, was not to change that. Indeed, the hawk's normal poise was considerably upset a few moments later when it appeared that the otter family had been luckier than he. He almost felt like scolding himself. For the otters, it was a day to rejoice in. But then for an otter, every day is a good day, since he is probably the happiest and hungriest creature alive. Always ravenous, full of spirits, high-strung, and quick to indulge in play. To satisfy such burning energy, a mother otter is kept constantly on the go, fetching and carrying the meals for her hungry brood. It just happened on this particular morning that she momentarily left her prize unguarded, and thereby put temptation in the way of her neighbor. And so the day took another unexpected turn, when the proud osprey, self-reliant hunter in his own right, turned scavenger and pilfered someone else's catch. Thus the day began. Everything contrary to custom. The fishhawk dining on trout he himself had not bothered to catch. Later that morning, the three young otters set out on a journey. A journey to nowhere, really, for otters don't need a definite destination. Their natural curiosity carries them along, free as leaves blown by the wind. Creatures of impulse, they love to explore, especially on a crisp, clean morning with adventure in the air. Suddenly, they spied an animal they knew was best left alone. For the wolverine is not ordinarily given to pranks and gregarious companionship. To him, the daily search for food is a serious pursuit, and he practices it with a certain relentless determination. As the pleasant morning wore on, the wanderers sometimes paused long enough to enjoy a warm, sandy riverbank. Here was the chance to dry themselves and clean their fur. Eventually, they reached the winding Snake River, and without a moment's hesitation, launched themselves in its swift currents. Now they became voyagers. Travel was effortless. All they need do was ride with the river. In no time, it would carry them for miles. On this day of fateful happenings, an event was about to occur that would seriously threaten the young otters. High above their playground, a rock balanced precariously on the crags. Over eons of time, the unrelenting forces of heat and cold had pried it loose. This was the moment it broke away. Suddenly, one otter appeared. Only one. But one at least had survived. Farther along the bank, he continued the hunt, half hoping his companions might turn up. He called to them, giving the short, sharp cry of distress. But there was no reply, no echoing sound. Instinctively now, he knew what he must do. He must return home. He must find his mother. The home den, when he got there, was empty. Mother was off somewhere on business of her own, no telling where. The warm scent of his fellows still lingered, but already it was growing fainter. And it only served to emphasize the overwhelming sense of emptiness within him. He made a valiant effort to amuse himself. No, but it was no go. He needed not a lifeless plaything, but vital, responsive playmates. The danger now was not starvation, it was loneliness. In an animal as sensitively attuned as the otter, loneliness can destroy even the will to live. And so this forlorn little orphan went forth seeking company. Company of most any kind. His first encounter was not too promising. If there was an out-and-out loner in these woods, here he was, the porcupine. Slow-moving, slow-thinking, and slow to encourage acquaintance. A prickly personality if there ever was one. It seemed that a lonely otter needing friends would have to find them elsewhere. Continuing his odyssey, the otter moved on. The hours passed. He found himself cruising lakes that were new and strange to him. Ordinarily, he was much at home in the water, but today, this was not home in the way he most needed. At last, he spied other creatures, some stately trumpeter swans. Eagerly, the otter came closer. His overtures well-meant and completely friendly. But his forwardness was not so interpreted. It happened that the swans were in their molting period, and until their wing feathers grew back, they could not take to the air. Thus, they were extremely skittish and mistrustful of all strangers. The morning was well along by now, and still no sign of his mother, no evidence of friend or foe. It was as though all others of his kind had vanished, leaving no footprint on these shores. Almost certainly there was life around him, if he could only find it. There was beauty, too. Beauty to catch and hold the eye. more he watched these antics, the more they intrigued him. For the pageantry of the water birds was colorful and somewhat unpredictable. About midday, the young otter left the lake country and moved up a tributary stream called Cottonwood Creek. Now he was in beaver territory. Before he had gone far, he met a curious barrier of sticks and logs standing squarely across the current. He had never seen its like before. Then he was young and inexperienced. For anyone really traveled in these parts, it would have been recognized instantly for what it was, a beaver dam. Above the barricade, the otter stopped in sudden surprise. Here was a possible friend, someone rather like himself. The beaver's reaction was decidedly cool and aloof. For some reason, beavers don't care for otters. Perhaps they can't stand so much nervous energy. He expressed his displeasure in the emphatic manner of all beavers. Instinctively, he went off to hide, using the secret entrance that led inside his snug house. This fellow was a bachelor, somewhat the exception among his kind. Yet he didn't live alone. He had a family of a sort. These were muskrats, squatters here with the beavers' full permission. Many animals in nature whose tolerance is as great. However, the beaver is the complete vegetarian, and so was no threat to his timid little tenants. Snubbed again. Oh well. The orphan nobody seemed to want set out to explore this watery wonderworld. Being an amphibious animal, he was as much at ease below the surface as he was above, and his effortless gliding dives took him along intriguing corridors through elfin dancing forests. Here was magic to soothe the spirit. The otter began to feel more himself. The bubbling pulse of a hidden spring was met and matched by his own effervescent joy. His nervous system began to respond to the excitement of the chase, for here were fish of every size and sort, the perfect answer to an otter's needs. His catch, it so happened, was made right at the beaver's front door. Why not pay the beaver a call? Now began a curious clash of personalities. Almost a clash of wills. The well-mannered beaver was too polite to protest, too timid to make an issue of it. Yet he found this obstreperous intruder with his smelly fish extremely offensive. What to do with a boorish guest who tracks mud all over your clean living room, throws fish bones on the carpet, and calls you names to boot? Can't remove him by the scruff of the neck as he deserves, then you can always remove yourself. Somehow the beaver seemed to feel that if he went away from his problem, the problem in time would go away too. His quiet sulking was presently interrupted by the approach of another beaver. me, what a day. Intruders from every quarter. But this one, it turned out, wasn't quite so unwelcome as the officious otter. For this was a female beaver, dainty, demure, and strangely disturbing. His self-sufficient bachelorhood was about to become a lost cause. This truly was a day of change. The beaver courtship is direct, matter-of-fact, and conducted without romantic frills. The two arrived at an understanding almost at once. Together, they set off on a short honeymoon, which, being beavers, would be spent at the woodlot cutting their winter's food supply. Of these woods made a disturbing discovery. His favorite grove had been taken over by outsiders. The moose often came to browse on the beaver's aspen. But at this time of year, they were more than just a nuisance. They could be definitely dangerous, for it was the rutting season. In their blind rages, the great beasts often went charging through the forest, hardly looking where they were going. A good time indeed for the beavers to be careful. When finally the monsters took themselves off, the beavers could at last settle down to the business at hand. Meanwhile, the empty beaver house became too much for the otter. By now the muskrats had deserted him too. And so he took up his odyssey again. Lonely, unwanted, no longer sure just what it was he was seeking. But now he knew. There they were, his family, somehow miraculously brought together again. It was now late afternoon, and all day long the threatening clouds had been gathering above the peaks. A mounting wind began to rattle the branches, bringing down the lifeless, faded leaves. The day's mood had turned somber. It was a sad and melancholy sound, the wind song, for it spoke to the creatures of Teton Marsh in ghostly tones of warning. Winter, winter, winter is near. And some would soon migrate, and some soon hibernate, and some would bear the full brunt of winter's coming. The toppling of a single tree might have passed unnoticed in the normal course of things. There were hundreds of dead cottonwoods in this valley, but this one happened to anchor the beaver dam, and its destruction meant disaster unless something were done at once. All the beavers' heritage rose to the challenge. Instinctively, they knew what they must do. Automatically and without hesitation, they headed for their woodlot to cut the trees needed for repair. In nature, as in life, it's an ill wind that blows nobody good. What bid fair to be disaster for the beavers, for the otters proved to be a delight. Carefree creatures such as these could hardly see it any other way, for here was fun without end. moment had arrived, the all-important first log. With incredible skill, born of generations of practice, the beaver floated it into position. The swift current would play him false. It was stronger than he had calculated, the volume of water greater than he realized. Refusing to concede defeat, the beaver picked up his tools and his pride and went back to work. No self-sympathy for him, no crying over lost logs. His next attempt was perfectly executed. The stick floated in sideways, caught at each end, and hung up exactly as it should. Now the work could go ahead a pace. Repair had begun. Trip after trip the beavers made, taking turn and turn about, going and coming as fast as they possibly could, all the rest of that long afternoon. Upstream a bit, where the pond had drained shallow, the otters were beside themselves with excitement. The trout were stranded in schools. The greedy little family feasted like insatiable gluttons. In the day's last light, the repair work was nearly finished. Another stick or two, and the dam would hold. The chinking with mud could come tomorrow. It had been touch and go for a while, and the beavers were near exhaustion. Yet they took a moment, in spite of that, to clean and groom their fur. A beaver hates to leave anything untidy, including even himself. Even as the day had begun in calm, so it ended in calm. As twilight fell, a sense of peace returned to this valley, a peace heralded by nature's oldest sign and symbol. The golden orb of the westering sun touched the scene with its last probing arrows of light. The mirror-smooth waters caught the jeweled rays and hurled them back in joyous glory. By nightfall, all was again as it once had been. Life was once more triumphant and undefeated. For the beavers, the otters, and all the denizens of Teton Marsh, it had been a good day to be alive, a day to live through and remember.